Welcome to Fearbound Stories. Please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now let's begin. I used to work nights at a small town cemetery, a place called Hollow Ridge. It wasn't famous, not historic, not even particularly big. Just a quiet patch of land where the wind always seemed a little colder, and where the groundskeeper swore the soil never stopped shifting. My job was simple: unlock the gates at dusk, lock them again at midnight, walk the perimeter, and make sure no teenagers were sneaking in to drink. I'd taken the job because it paid well, and honestly, I liked the quiet. After everything I'd been through that year, silence felt safer than people. But silence in a cemetery was never truly silent. The first time I saw him, I didn't think much of it. Just a man walking between the graves. Tall, thin, wearing an old dark coat that reached his knees. No flashlight, no phone, just walking. Slow, deliberate steps, head slightly tilted, as if he was listening to something only he could hear. I called out, "Sir, the cemetery's closing soon." He didn't look at me, didn't flinch, didn't stop. He just slid between the rows of headstones and vanished behind a mausoleum. When I walked over, he was gone. No footsteps in the frost, no silhouette, nothing. I shrugged it off. People wander. People grieve. People get lost in their memories. I tried not to be the kind of guard who assumed the worst. But the second night, things changed. It was colder than usual, the kind of cold that bites even through layers. I was doing my final patrol when I heard it. Soft footsteps on gravel somewhere behind me. Slow, dragging, like someone was walking with one shoe heavier than the other. I turned my flashlight around. There he was again, the same man. The same coat, the same slow walk. This time, he was closer, maybe 30 feet away. But something was wrong. His head wasn't just tilted, it was almost leaning against his shoulder, like the bones in his neck weren't supporting him. His arms hung stiff at his sides, and even in that weak beam of light, I could swear his feet weren't touching the ground evenly. Every few steps, he'd glide. Not walk, glide. "Sir," I called again, this time louder. "You can't be in here after hours." He stopped, but he didn't turn toward me. He just froze, mid-step like a statue someone forgot to finish carving. Then his head twitched. Not turned, twitched, like something inside pulled the strings too fast. That's when I felt it. The air around me thickened. My breath fogged out in a huge cloud even though it wasn't that cold a moment ago. And from somewhere ahead of me, I heard whispering. Not words, just breath. Too close, too many voices, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. For the first time in that job, I felt the urge to leave, to run, to get out. But I stood still. Because the man finally turned his head toward me. Not his body, just his head. And his face? God, his face wasn't right. It wasn't angry, or sad, or anything human. His mouth hung slightly open, lips pale and cracked, and his eyes were so dark I couldn't tell where the pupils were. But worse, he was smiling. A slow, dragging smile that crept across his face like it hurt to stretch his skin that far. He started walking again toward me this time. No, not walking. He wasn't bending his knees. He wasn't shifting his weight. He was just sliding and along the ground, silent and smooth, the way a shadow moves when the light changes. I stepped back. My flashlight flickered. The whispering grew louder, circling around me, rushing past my ears, brushing against my jacket. He kept coming. I backed up again, nearly tripping over a headstone. My heart was hammering now, and something inside me said, "Do not turn around. Do not run. Do not look away." But instinct took over. I turned and sprinted for the gate. The whispering rose into a rushing roar behind me, wind or breath or something else entirely. My legs burned. My lungs felt tight. The path seemed longer than usual, like the cemetery was stretching. When I finally reached the gate, I slammed it shut, locked it, and stumbled back to my car. Before leaving, I looked through the bars one last time. He was standing there, just inside the gate, just beyond the reach of the streetlight, his head still tilted, his arms hanging heavy at his sides, and that smile still there. I drove home shaking so badly I almost hit a sign on the way out. The next morning, I told the groundskeeper about the man. He gave me a strange look and said, "Oh, you saw him. Don't worry, he stays inside the gate. He doesn't follow you home, as long as you lock up." That "as long as you lock up" has stayed in my head, haunted me, because the next night when I arrived for my shift, the gate was already open, unlocked, wide open, as if someone had walked out, and in the frost on the ground, leading away from the entrance, were footprints. Just one pair, long, thin, bare, dragging slightly with every step. Before we move on to the next story, give us your verdict on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. The cemetery had been closed for nearly 40 years, but people still found reasons to visit it. Some came to lay flowers at graves nobody remembered anymore. Others came because they liked the silence, the stillness, the feeling that time didn't move the same way inside those rusted gates. And then there were people like Daniel Whitlock, a hobby photographer who believed the old cemetery was the perfect backdrop for his dark, melancholic portraits. He wasn't a thrill seeker or a ghost hunter. He just liked forgotten places. Daniel arrived just after sundown. His backpack clinked with lenses and tripods as he walked along the cracked path that wound through the gravestones. Dead leaves scraped the dirt with a sound that almost resembled whispering. He stopped at the base of an old stone angel, whose wings were cracked straight down the middle, like someone had tried to tear them off a long time ago. He lifted his camera, adjusted the shutter, and took a photo. The flash briefly lit up the graveyard. When the light faded, Daniel frowned. He could have sworn he saw someone standing behind the angel. Just a human-shaped blur. Maybe a trick of the shadows. Maybe nothing. He took another photo. Flash. He lowered the camera and froze. The figure was still there, a pale shape standing directly behind the angel now, closer than before. Daniel blinked and looked again with his own eyes, not through the lens. Nothing. The graves were empty. He exhaled shakily and tried to laugh it off. The third picture changed everything. He wasn't aiming at anything in particular this time, just testing a long exposure shot. The flash fired. But before he could lower the camera, something cold brushed the back of his neck. Goosebumps crawled across his skin. It felt like fingers, slowly dragging upward. He spun around. No one. His pulse hammered. His breath formed a thin mist in front of him, even though the air wasn't that cold tonight. He checked the photo. His hands began to tremble uncontrollably. Behind him, in the photo, stood a woman, pale, tall, wearing a dress that looked soaked with dirt. Her hair hung in stringy, wet ropes over her face, and her arms were bent at unnatural angles, like someone had broken them and never set them right. But what made his throat tighten was her eyes. They glowed white, empty, not reflecting light but emitting it. And worst of all, she wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking directly at him. In the photo, Daniel's breath hitched, his mind spun. He forced himself to lower the camera and slowly glanced over his shoulder. Still nothing. He took a step back, heart pounding, when a soft clicking sound reached his ears. At first he thought it was branches or insects, but then he recognized it. It was the sound of a camera shutter. right behind him. He turned slowly, very slowly, and there she was, the woman from the photograph, standing just 8 feet away, half hidden in the fog, her body twitching in tiny jerking spasms as if trying to mimic standing upright. Her head tilted back and forth in short, sharp movements, like she was trying to decide which angle to view him from. Daniel stumbled backward, nearly dropping his camera. The woman stepped forward, but her movement wasn't normal. She didn't walk. Her feet didn't lift. She glided, her body dragging behind her like something heavy was pulling at her spine. And then she raised her hand. In her fingers was a camera, old, rusted, cracked down the middle. She aimed it at him. Click. The sound made Daniel flinch and cover his face, but no flash followed. No light, just the cold metallic snap of dead machinery. When he uncovered his face, she was closer, much closer. Click. Her body jerked forward another half meter. Her broken arms twitched as she lifted the camera again. Click. Daniel finally turned and ran. He sprinted blindly between gravestones, cutting through the fog, tripping over roots and old metal markers. Behind him, he heard the clicking. Fast now. Rapid. Like a stuttering machine. Click, 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 click. She was following him. He reached the rusted gate, grabbed the bars, climbed halfway up. Click. The sound came from right below him. He froze. Slowly, against every survival instinct he had, he looked down. She was at the base of the gate. Not climbing. Not reaching. Just standing there, camera pointed straight up at him. Her face was finally visible through the hanging hair. Daniel stopped breathing. Her skin was gray. Her jaw hung lower than it should have, dislocated and dropped to one side. And her eyes, they were hollow, glowing with that same unnatural white light. She pressed the shutter one last time. Click. Daniel fell backward over the gate, hit the ground hard, scrambled up, and sprinted toward his car. He didn't stop running until he was inside and speeding away, gravel flying behind his tires. Later that night, when he finally got home, he checked the camera he dropped at the cemetery entrance. Miraculously, it hadn't broken. He connected it to his laptop, hands still shaking. He scrolled through the photos. There she was, in every one. Even the ones he took before he noticed anything wrong. Even the ones from the previous week and the week before that. In every single picture, she was just a little closer. And the last photo, the one taken at the gate, made his stomach twist. It wasn't a picture of him climbing the fence. It was taken from inside his house, facing his front door. Today, he hasn't stepped outside since. His neighbors say they hear a camera shutter clicking late at night, always in sets of 3, and always followed by a woman's voice whispering something too faint to understand. Before we move on to the next story, give us your verdict on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. There was a part of Hillside Rest Cemetery that people avoided, without ever admitting why. No one said it was haunted. Nobody claimed to have seen anything. But whenever someone walked past the far northeastern corner, near the fence smothered with ivy and rust, they instinctively quickened their pace. It was the grave with no name. No stone, no marker, no record, just a patch of earth that remained slightly sunken year-round. Some years it sank deeper, some years it puffed up like it had been freshly turned, but one thing stayed consistent. It was always colder there. Tyler Morgan had heard the stories, but he dismissed them. He wasn't the type to scare easily. He was a geology student, the kind with dirt always under his nails and textbooks filled with charts and core samples. When someone mentioned the unmarked grave, he saw not a ghost story, but a perfect thesis topic. Unstable soil compaction in pre-regulation burial grounds, he had written at the top of his notebook. Perfect. Scientific. Explainable. He decided he would study that patch of earth every evening for a week. But by the second night, science didn't feel like a shield anymore. On the first evening, the sun had just dipped below the trees when he reached the grave, his backpack clinking with tools. He knelt, pressed his palm to the soil, and hissed. Cold. Not normal cold. A biting, coffin-deep cold that sank up through his hand and crawled into his wrist. He shook it off and jammed a soil sampler into the ground. It slid too easily, sinking deeper than expected, like the soil wasn't resisting at all. When he pulled the tube out, he frowned. The top half of the soil plug was ice cold. The bottom half was warm. Warm from what? He made notes, took photos, and left before dark. He told himself it was nothing. Night 2 proved him wrong. The air that evening was still. No wind, no movement among the headstones. Tyler crouched at the grave again, taking measurements. When he felt it, a faint tremor beneath him. Subtle, like the earth exhaled. He froze. Another tremor. Not random. A rhythm. 3 slow thuds. He pressed his ear against the soil. Tap. 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 The sound was unmistakable as someone knocking from below. He jerked back, heart pounding. His brain scrambled for explanations. Animals, water shifting, roots expanding. But nothing fit that perfect cadence. His breath fogged in front of him, even though the evening wasn't cold. That's when he heard the voice. Help. It was muffled, warped by layers of earth, but it was a voice. A woman's. Fragile. Desperate. Tyler stumbled backward, tripping over a broken marker. He didn't run. Not yet. Something inside him, some morbid magnetism, kept him there. The soil started to move. Not sink, rise. A bulge pushed upward from beneath the dirt, slow but undeniable. The ground swelled like something beneath it was forcing its way closer to the surface. Tyler whispered, shaking, "Hello? Can you hear me?" The swelling stopped, and the voice rose again, clearer now. "Don't leave." The dirt shifted, forming an impression, a shallow dip outlining the shape of a face, a forehead, a nose, lips moving beneath the soil. Tyler scrambled back, crawling on his hands. A pale finger broke through, thin, delicate, caked in wet black soil. It wiggled blindly like the hand of someone clawing upward from deep underwater. Another finger tore through, then a third. The hand twisted unnaturally, pulling itself forward even though its arm was still buried. Soil cracked open. Tyler could barely breathe. The hand wasn't reaching for freedom. It was reaching for him. He staggered to his feet and ran, sprinting full speed toward the exit. Gravel flew beneath his shoes. His lungs burned. Behind him, he heard the faint sound of soil shifting, almost like something dragging itself out inch by inch. He didn't stop until he reached his car and sped away. That night, his dreams were filled with the voice. "Help. Don't leave. Help." He woke drenched in sweat, unsure whether he'd really escaped anything at all. But the story didn't end there. He returned in daylight, against every instinct, to reassure himself it had all been a hallucination brought on by panic. He regretted it immediately. The unmarked grave, previously sunken, was now elevated. A fresh mound of earth like something had dug upward and climbed out. On top of the mound lay his soil sampler tube. It had been bent in half like cheap aluminum. Tyler's stomach dropped. He staggered forward, scanning the ground. Footprints. Small, bare, leading away from the mound. The track stopped abruptly near the fence, ending as if someone had simply vanished. Tyler forced himself to leave and swore never to return. But that night, and every night since, he hears tapping beneath his bedroom floorboards. 3 slow knocks. Always 3. Sometimes just before he falls asleep, he hears the woman's voice too. Not muffled by soil now, but whispering directly into his ear, close enough to feel her breath. "You didn't help me, so I came here." Before we move on to the next story, give us your verdict on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. The caretaker's shack in Hillside Rest had been abandoned for nearly 2 decades, long before Tyler was even born. It stood on the edge of the cemetery behind a tangle of oak roots, leaning forward as if the forest itself were slowly pulling it down. People said the last caretaker, a man named Edwin Marrow, left overnight without taking a single belonging. His clothes, boots, shaving kit, everything was still inside when they found it. But everyone agreed on one thing. He didn't leave alone. Tyler hadn't planned to go near the shack. His project had nothing to do with it. But after his encounter at the unmarked grave, he wanted answers. Any explanation that could make sense of the impossible. It was dusk when he approached the shack, the sky washed in bruised purple. The door hung open a few centimeters, swaying gently even though there was no wind. Tyler hesitated at the threshold. The air coming from inside felt cooler than the night outside, like stepping into an old freezer. He swallowed, clicked on his flashlight, and stepped in. Dust coated everything. Cobwebs sagged between shelves. An old metal bed frame sat pressed against the wall, mattress long gone. A kettle lay overturned on the stove. Boots stood neatly beside the door, never reclaimed. But something else caught his eye. Children's drawings. Dozens of them, taped unevenly to the walls. Faded sheets of crayon-scrawled paper. Some showed figures holding hands. Others depicted gravestones, dark clouds, strange symbols Tyler didn't recognize. One drawing showed a tall man in a uniform, the caretaker, with a small child standing next to him. The child's face was scribbled out. Tyler stepped closer, squinting at the drawings. Most were done by a child's hand, messy and bright. But some looked like they were done by shaking fingers, drawn in jagged strokes almost violently. He turned his flashlight toward the bed frame. Under it lay something small, a toy wooden block, old and worn. The letter E burned into one side. Before he could pick it up, he heard it. A soft giggle, right behind him. Tyler spun, flashlight trembling. No one, just the empty doorway opening into the dim cemetery beyond. He exhaled, forcing his pulse to slow. And then the giggle came again. Closer, at his feet. He jerked the flashlight downward. There were footprints in the dust. Small, bare, child-sized. And they were fresh, the dust still settling where the toes dragged. Tyler's mouth went dry. He backed away as the footprints moved, not walking but forming one after another, as if an invisible child were circling him. Then the shack door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the room. Only Tyler's flashlight cut through the pitch black. He raised it with shaking hands. A silhouette now stood at the far corner. Small, child-sized. Still, frozen. Tyler whispered, "Hello?" The shape didn't move. He stepped forward, beam of light trembling over the walls, the drawings, the bed, until it landed on the corner. There was nothing there, but the giggle echoed from the opposite side now. Tyler turned, and this time he saw it clearly. A small boy crouched under the table, skin gray, eyes white, jaw hanging slightly open as if unhinged. He was smiling. Tyler stumbled backward, kicking over a metal bucket. The boy crawled out, but not naturally. His joints bent wrong, his limbs twitching like a marionette pulled by invisible strings. Tyler whispered, "What happened to you?" The boy tilted his head. The smile widened. "He didn't leave," the boy whispered, voice thin and dragging like he spoke through dust. Tyler's hands shook violently. "Who didn't leave?" The boy pointed at the walls, at the drawings, at the tall man with the child scribbled out. Then he looked directly at Tyler. "I didn't want to stay alone." The temperature plummeted. Frost crystallized across the window glass. Tyler's breath came out in frantic white clouds. The boy stepped forward, not walking, sliding across the floor, feet dragging like dead weight. Tyler bolted for the door, shoulders slamming into the wood. It didn't budge. Behind him, small bare feet pattered across the floor, fast, impossibly fast. He shoved the door again. The frame groaned. Something scraped up his back. Tiny fingers, cold as ice, clutching at his clothes. "Stay with me," the boy whispered into his spine. The door finally burst open. Tyler fell outside, tumbling into the dirt and scrambling to his feet. He sprinted toward the cemetery gates. Halfway there, he heard the giggle again. But this time, it came from multiple places, all around him, from behind gravestones, from the tree line, from under the ground. Children laughing, whispering, calling. He didn't look back. He didn't go home. He drove until the cemetery was miles behind him. But that night, and every night since, he hears small bare feet pattering across his bedroom floor just after 3 a.m. Sometimes they stop right beside his bed. Sometimes he hears breathing low and cold. And once, just once, he swears he felt a tiny hand wrap around his ankle. Before we move on to the next story, give us your verdict on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. There was a grave in Hillside Rest Cemetery that people only talked about in low tones. A grave with a headstone tilted so far forward, it nearly touched the dirt. The inscription had faded long ago, erased by decades of rain and winter frost, but everyone remembered the story. They said the grave never stayed the same. Sometimes it looked freshly dug. Sometimes it bulged upward. Sometimes footprints appeared around it, always leading toward the grave, never away. Some believed it was cursed. Others said it showed you how you were going to die. Tyler didn't believe either until he saw it. It was late, far too late for him to be in the cemetery again. After what he'd seen at the unmarked grave and the caretaker's shack, any reasonable person would have stayed away forever. But Tyler wasn't reasonable anymore. He wasn't thinking straight. He hadn't slept in days. The whispers in his house wouldn't stop. Something was pulling him back, a compulsion he couldn't explain. The moon was nearly full that night. It cast long, sharp shadows that stretched across the cemetery like dark fingers. Tyler wandered between the rows of old stones, drawn by something he didn't understand. Then he saw it. The grave. The one that supposedly showed the future. Its headstone leaned forward at an unnatural angle, as if it were bowing toward the earth. No name, no date. Just a faint carving of an eye that had eroded into a wide, hollow indentation. A strange symbol was chiseled beneath it, a shape Tyler couldn't identify, almost like a sideways hourglass. He stepped closer. The soil around the grave looked disturbed, not dug up, pushed up, as if something had risen and then sunk back down, leaving the earth warped and uneven. Tyler crouched beside the mound. That's when he noticed the footprints. Not just any footprints. His footprints. The exact tread of his boots. His stride. His weight. But they weren't the ones he'd made tonight. They were older. Pressed deeper, leading directly to the grave. Where they disappeared beneath the soil. He felt a rush of cold panic. The kind that starts deep in your spine and spreads outward like ice. He backed away, shaking his head, trying to convince himself he was imagining things. The wind shifted. Something whispered. Not from around him, but from underneath him. He froze. The dirt at the base of the grave shifted, just slightly, like something breathing below. Then the headstone moved. It tilted even farther forward with a slow, creaking groan. The carved eye now pointed directly at him. Tyler stumbled backward, tripping over a fallen branch, but he couldn't look away. The symbol beneath the eye began to darken. Not glow, darken. Like ink bleeding through stone. The soil split down the middle. A deep crack tore through the mound, and a hand, pale, thin, trembling violently, pushed upward through the dirt. Not human anymore. Too long, too sharp, too wrong. Tyler scrambled back on his hands, heartbeat thundering in his ears, but the hand didn't reach for him. It reached upward, toward the headstone, as if touching it. Then the grave spoke. Not aloud, not in sound, but directly inside his skull. The voice wasn't familiar. It was old, ancient, broken. It hurt to hear it, like shards of glass grinding against the inside of his head. "Your path ends here." Tyler screamed and bolted, sprinting across the graves, branches whipping his arms, fog coiling between his legs. He ran until his lungs felt like they were tearing. He didn't stop until he reached his car. He drove home shaking, sweat dripping down his back, his mind replaying that single word over and over. Soon, soon, soon. That night he locked every window, every door, turned on every light. But sometime after 3 a.m., he woke to a sound that made his blood freeze.
Dirt. Sliding!
Shifting. Inside his house. He sat up slowly, breath trembling, and looked down. There was a small mound of soil forming on his bedroom floor. Fresh, damp, and pulsing like something breathing just beneath the surface. Tyler couldn't scream, couldn't move, could only watch. Then the mound cracked open. A familiar boot print pressed itself into the soil. His boot print, exactly the way he had seen it at the grave. A second print formed beside it, then a third, walking toward his bed, step by step, slow, deliberate, unavoidable. The voice whispered again, closer now, clearer, colder. "Your path ends now." Tyler's lights flickered. His breath stopped. The mound split wide open, and something climbed out. You've just crossed the boundary between reality and the unknown. If you felt the fear tonight, make sure to subscribe before you leave, because on this channel every story is just the beginning. New nightmares arrive every few nights, each one darker than the last. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and your mind open. You are now part of the fear-bound family.